It's time for the 1430 Connection on 1430 WNAV and 99.9 FM, spotlighting news, newsmakers, and important community issues. Now, with this week's edition of the 1430 Connection, here is WNAV news anchor Donna Cole.
Welcome to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. Today I have the pleasure of talking to Kate Fritz. She's the Executive Director of the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay. Kate, thank you very much for joining me today.
Donna, thanks for having me.
First, let me say happy anniversary, because 2021 is a big deal in the world of the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. 50 years of clean water work in the Chesapeake Bay, and really thinking back to where we got started and the work we're doing now, it's been a fascinating journey to really follow.
And that was 1971.
Yep. We were formed in 1971 by a group of concerned citizens who were in Hampton Roads, Virginia, and in Baltimore, Maryland. And they came together through various means. A big connector was the Women's League of Voters and a lot of the junior leagues. And so I think in 1971, those groups were starting to really wrestle through what environmental restoration and protection really meant. I mean, the first Earth Day was in 1970, so in the 70s it was a real awakening for our country around some of our environmental issues, and so that's how we came to be, was through a lot of the Chesapeake region-specific conversations about preserving and restoring our water quality in the Chesapeake Bay.
And according to your website, it says since 1971, the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay has dedicated efforts to restoring the Chesapeake Bay's rivers and streams through partnerships, collaboration, and individual and community stewardships. I would say that for those of us that are not in science or not in front of the Chesapeake Bay or involved with the Chesapeake Bay every day, especially back in the 1970s, but even some today, you don't realize that this is a precious natural resource that needs taken care of. It doesn't, the fixes don't happen automatically.
Absolutely, yeah. It's taken us generations to get into this state of the Chesapeake, and it's going to take us generations to get out of it. So, even though we've been, hard at work convening voices to discuss some of the biggest challenges in the Chesapeake, and then finding solutions on the ground for cleaner water, like planting trees and restoring streams. That's been 50 years of work, and we've moved the needle. The Chesapeake Bay has seen some great successes in that 50 years, but we have a lot of work ahead of us still. And with new science coming out around climate change, the problems in the Chesapeake Bay are going to continue to be exacerbated, and so it might take new techniques and culmination of some of the historical wisdom that we've learned over time to continue to make progress in improving the Chesapeake Bay for all.
And I know you focus on 4 areas, and we're going to get to those in a minute. But since you brought up climate change and its relation to the Chesapeake Bay, one of the biggest problems we're seeing, many communities are seeing, is sea level rise and more flooding than we've ever seen in the past. Yes?
Yes. Yep. Climate is changing around us for sure. We've had record rainfall years. I think 2019 beat a record for the Chesapeake Bay that had been set in the late 1800s in terms of how much rainfall fell in the summer months in 2019, and I think that's a trend that will continue forward. The other interesting thing about the climate change impacts to the Chesapeake Bay is that the Chesapeake Bay as a watershed, as a land mass, is actually sinking. And so with sea levels rising and the land mass in the Chesapeake sinking, it really exacerbates the drowning of wetlands at our coastal shorelines, the drowning of our waterfront. I'm here in Annapolis, and I see sunny day flooding all the time in downtown Annapolis. So it's really changing how some of these, what we used to consider just storm-related flooding events, they're happening on a frequent basis, even when there's no storms at hand. So it's a really compounding factor here in the Chesapeake Bay.
And when we hear about climate refugees, we think about people in far-off lands. We have climate refugees here on the Chesapeake, do we not?
Absolutely. I mean, there's lots of lots of areas that are impacted by the rising sea level and then continual flooding. Certainly down in Norfolk, Virginia, there is a lot of talk about how Norfolk is going to handle the encroaching sea level rise. And then here in Annapolis, a lot of businesses, I think it's like something like 30-plus businesses and historic buildings are going to be impacted in the next 20, 30 years. And people will be forced to move, businesses will be forced to move, and we'll have to make some, community decisions around historic preservation in downtown Annapolis. So absolutely, I think climate refugees will become a reality here in the Chesapeake.
We've already lost islands. We've seen other islands where people have had to move on the Chesapeake Bay. And as you said, in Hampton Roads, I read an article, a few years back on a whole beautiful multi-million-dollar housing community where the houses are now worthless with no resale value.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate reality. Yep.
All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back on the 1430 Connection. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole, talking today to Kate Fritz, Executive Director of the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay. Kate, you have 4 areas that you focus on. Let's start with forestry.
Absolutely. So I just want to let everybody know that our mission as an organization is to bring together communities, companies, and conservationists to restore the lands and waters of the Chesapeake Bay. So we do that in 4 different program areas. In our forest program, we work to replant trees across the entirety of the landscape of the Chesapeake Bay. We work in Pennsylvania on rural agricultural land to help plant stream-side buffers, which are called riparian buffers. In our suburban areas, we're helping neighborhoods increase their tree canopy. And in urban areas as well, we're helping increase the urban tree canopy and access to green space to help reduce negative impacts like stormwater runoff. We know that trees are really good at absorbing extra water before it hits our local waterways and pollutes them. We also know that trees are really good at reducing the heat island effect in highly urbanized areas. Anyone who's walked out in a parking lot in the middle of July knows how hot a parking lot can get, and we know that trees can help improve shade over those surfaces, which not only provide a benefit to the humans that utilize this space, but it can also reduce the temperature of those hot parking lots in the summertime so that when it does rain, the water going into our local streams is not as hot. So trees are the cheapest and most efficient way that we can reduce stormwater and provide other really important social impacts to the communities around them as well.
And how do you work with people and businesses and communities to plant more trees? Do people just show up at your office in, let's say, Annapolis and say, "Can I have a tree?"
Some people certainly do, and sometimes we can help. But most of our projects are grant funded. So we have different grants across our region. We have 4 offices we operate out of. Our headquarters is in Annapolis. We have an office in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., and in Richmond, Virginia. So all of those 4 states have different types of funding. We do have federal funding that helps us increase tree canopy around the Chesapeake watershed. So there's various ways that we deliver our programs. Sometimes it's direct government assistance, like in Washington, D.C. We run a couple River Smart Home programs, which are, communities can engage with us, and it's a cost share program. So communities are subsidized through our grant. We're able to help them pay for putting stormwater features on their property or helping reduce their pervious surfaces, et cetera. So it really depends on where in the landscape a community is interested and how we bring funding to the table to implement some of this work.
Okay, fair enough. Moving on to agriculture, which often gets a very bad reputation when it comes to the Chesapeake Bay, but things are changing, and farmers are getting more educated on how, because they love the natural resources, they depend on them. They're getting more educated and more responsible for helping the Bay, yes? Absolutely, yeah.
My Pennsylvania staff, where we've focused much of our agriculture work at this point, always tells me that they have yet to meet a farmer who doesn't care about losing the land, eroding land from their farm fields into their local streams. That is something that farmers are attuned to, and that they want to reverse. They want to be good stewards. And as you said, this is their livelihood. And so when they watch their own land wash down the local stream, that's certainly a negative economic impact to them. So I do think things are changing. I think one of the other things that's influencing the change is at the kind of the corporate level. So we have a partnership with Turkey Hill Dairy in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. If anyone's ever been up to the Turkey Hill Experience, it's a great place to bring kids back when we get back and we can go back inside and all. But Turkey Hill, we have a clean water partnership with them, and we're working with them to help bring technical resources to their farmers to implement best management practices and different techniques on their property to reduce the negative impacts that is occurring on some of their properties. And at the same time, Turkey Hill Dairy is helping provide an incentive to their farmers that are producing milk for their product to join us and to do work on their property. So it's a really interesting and new and innovative way for a nonprofit and a private company to work together to actually bring about on-the-ground impact. We're working with about 160 farmers through the Turkey Hill Clean Water Partnership and through the dairy co-op that's called the Maryland and Virginia Dairy Co-op. And so, this is an area where we're seeing other corporations become interested. Certainly sustainability is a driving force in a lot of business decisions these days related around climate impact and reducing greenhouse gas emissions and reducing water pollution. And so there are other large agribusinesses that are also interested in finding ways to help improve water quality in their local communities by working with their farmers on the ground and nonprofits like the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay to do that kind of work. So there's a lot of exciting opportunities there.
Great example of a collaboration with Turkey Hill, and good ice cream, I might add.
Absolutely. If you are an ice cream eater, you can feel good. I always think of Turkey Hill Dairy as the clean stream ice cream. So we can all feel good when we indulge a little bit.
All right, let's take another quick break. We'll be right back on the 1430 Connection. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole, talking today to Kate Fritz, Executive Director of the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay. All right, so let's go into green infrastructure and stewardship and engagement. Tell me about those, Kate.
Sure. So our green infrastructure program is focused on helping reduce stormwater impact on our developed land. So when it rains and it hits a rooftop or a roadway, that water has no place to be absorbed into the ground. And so instead it runs off of our parking lots, and it runs off really fast, and it runs off really hot because it picks up the heat from the surface, and it picks up all the pollutants that are on that surface, and it washes it all really fast and really hot and polluted into our local streams. So the work we do in our green infrastructure program is to build features back into our landscape that help intercept this water to give it an opportunity to soak in and be absorbed by the ground instead of just discharging right to our local streams and polluting our local streams. So we do this work in different ways across the landscape of the Chesapeake. In Washington, D.C., we've been administering the River Smart Homes program, which is a rebate program for homeowners in Washington, D.C. We've been doing that for the last decade, helping install rain gardens and rain barrels, which help catch the water at the end of your gutter. In Richmond, in Virginia, we've been doing a lot of green infrastructure work over the years. We did a Greening the Capitol project a couple years ago, helped put stormwater features around the Capitol building in Richmond, and helped put impervious surfaces like bricks so that water can go through instead of off. And we've been doing a lot of that work up here in Maryland. But in Maryland, we've been doing a lot of work related to stream restorations and living shoreline work. As you know, Maryland has I think the largest shoreline to the Chesapeake Bay, and so we have a lot of interest in the shoreline and how that is being impacted by not just stormwater runoff coming from the land, but also from the eroding tide as well. So I guess that's all to say that how we do our green infrastructure work across the landscape really depends on the community in which we're working.
And the stewardship and engagement. aspect of your work. And I should add, there are probably numerous opportunities for volunteers within your organization, right?
Absolutely. I'm happy to chat about that as well. So part of the, when we were formed in the early 70s, we formed ourselves as a place to bring different voices to the table to wrestle through challenges and then come up with solutions. And so a lot of our work is around stewarding people who are at different stages of their journey towards understanding about personal impact in the Chesapeake Bay. And we do a lot of work to engage our partners in our communities and partners with companies and partners with conservation groups. So the biggest example of stewardship and engagement work that we do is we host an annual event conference every year called the Chesapeake Watershed Forum, and we'll be having our 16th one this year. And we attract over 400 professionals and volunteers working in this space to come together and continue to learn about innovations that are going on, to network with each other, to really engage and educate this community so that we can all continue to move forward together. So that's one of our huge engagement opportunities in the Chesapeake.
When is that happening?
It will be happening in November this year.
Okay.
And we normally host it at the National Conservation Training Center in Shepherdstown, West Virginia, but we will likely be going virtual with it again this year.
That makes sense.
So
okay.
That'll be held in early November, yes.
All right.
So you asked about some volunteer opportunities, and there's really two big opportunities for us. The first is through a program that we've been running for the last 15 plus years called Project Clean Stream. And that is really it's a resource for interested people to connect with us who are interested in doing a community-led trash cleanup or some kind of beautification effort in their communities. And so we're able to provide resources like gloves and trash bags, help point people to potential sites that need to be cleaned up. Or if you're a volunteer just looking to join an existing group, we have a map of all of our volunteer events, and people can sign up to join events that way. So we are officially kicking Project Clean Stream off on April 2nd, Friday, April 2nd, and we'll be kicking it off across the region in all of our regions. And so if people are interested, people can go to our website, allianceforthebay.org, and there's more information about Project Clean Stream under the events portion of our page. And so people can get linked up with existing events going on or help create their own. So that's a really great volunteer opportunity anybody can do, and especially in times of COVID and maintaining physical distance, trash pickups is a great way to contribute something to your community and maintain a safe distance. And so even if it's just you and your family getting out and walking your neighborhood or going to your favorite local park, it's a great opportunity to bring a trash bag with you and help clean up your community.
It sounds like the perfect opportunity. Again, it's allianceforthebay.org. Kate, I think we're out of time.
Oh, my goodness. There's so much more to talk about. But, Donna, I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share a little bit more about the Alliance today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for doing all that you do. And this is Donna Cole. This is the 1430 Connection. We will see you next week.